Hi. Well, I'm Tom Tikka of the Impersonators, and I hope you're having a good time listening to our EP. Or, well, maybe just getting started. But in case you've already given it a go, you probably noticed that it's a pretty eclectic selection of songs, both musically and lyrically. I must say, though, that in my mind, it's all rather connected. It has this red thread running through it all. Maybe I'm the only one who can see it, but anyway, as far as I'm concerned, it's there. But before I get to the EP and the actual songs, let me just say a few words about how the Impersonators began. There's an English proverb, never judge a book by its cover, which I think applies well to how Antti and I became friends. We met at the university on this course called Feminist Poetry. It's actually pretty cool how it all happened. Well, I mean, not sure about the cool factor here, but I'll tell you the story anyway. Anyway, so we were both late registering, and the only course that could fit us, mind you, we needed the credits, was called Feminist Poetry. As it happened, not surprisingly, I guess we were the only guys there. And when it came time to find a study buddy, I believe it was the lecturer who teamed us up to provide male insight into female writing. If I remember correctly, we're going through this poem by Sylvia Plath. Be that as it may. So we teamed up, and Antti and I are very different as people. I'm outgoing. Antti's a bit more reserved. I'll tell you, this study buddy thing seemed a bit awkward to both of us. Definitely not a match made in heaven, if you know what I mean. It was rather strained at first, to be honest with you, when we met at the library and we got our notes out. And this all changed, though, when I noticed the music magazines this guy was carrying around in his backpack. And they were the same ones I was reading. But even more than that, I noticed he had a CD box set in his backpack by one of my favorite groups from the 60s, the Zombies. So we started talking about music, and the strangest thing happened. This guy who'd been relatively quiet up to that point became alive and turned out to be a walking music encyclopedia. I mean, he knew just about everything there is to know about music, and not just the 60s, all eras. And he liked all the same bands that I did: the Beatles, the Byrds, the Go-Betweens, R.E.M., etc. I mean, we became fast friends. However, we didn't start writing together right away. It took us about 10 years to do that. Which, I mean, in retrospect, that doesn't make any sense, but that's how it happened. In fact, I didn't even know Antti wrote poems until one day, completely out of the blue. He sent me one of the poems he was working on, called Ghost Town Radio. I loved it, and I thought, instantly when I saw it, I thought it would make a great rock song. So I wrote a melody to that poem, and that's really where it all started. Pretty soon we had written quite a few songs together. I mean, about 20. Also, now that I think about it, it was perfect timing for me. Carmen Gray, which was the band I was involved with before the Impersonators, had just folded, and I wasn't doing anything else. I guess what I mean to say is that I needed a project, a vehicle for my songs, if you will, and the Impersonators provided just that for me. But in the beginning, obviously, we weren't called the Impersonators. The project didn't have any name. I had a few lame names for the group. I can't even remember. The name The Impersonators came about when I was telling one of my closest friends about the group, explaining how it was a group of two songwriters rather than a band in the traditional sense of the word, and how I was playing all the instruments. She listened to me and said, well, why not call the group The Impersonators? Her logic was that I was impersonating a fully fledged rock band and impersonating all the members in the band, one day being the bass player and the next day the drummer and so forth. I liked the idea, and so did Antti, and that's how we became the Impersonators. I must point out that nowadays I do not play everything myself anymore. That was just in the beginning. Nowadays, you have two guys playing all the instruments. Yours truly, and of course, our producer, Janne Saksa. Okay, but about the EP. It's taken us about a year to record the 5 songs. I know it's a long time, but we wanted to do this one track at a time to give each and every cut on the EP the same amount of focus and effort. We wanted each song to have a character of its own. But I'm not just talking about production here. I'm also talking about the writing. In terms of the melodies, I think I had at least 5 different versions of each of these tunes before I settled on one that I felt was the definitive melody. The same thing with the lyrics. Antti and I would hone them days on end, attempting to find the right words and the right nuances. We wanted each story to be a bit different, unique, if you will. Burning Blue, we wrote to console a friend who just lost his wife to cancer. That was heartbreaking in the story. Broken Snow is about how life will ultimately break your heart. Disney fantasies only exist in movies, not usually in real life. You're the One is obviously a bona fide love song. Effigy is about killing your own ego so you can learn to enjoy life. And Sad Café, well, it's about a relationship that's gone wrong. Sort of a sad marriage. Anyway, I hope our diligence has paid off. We certainly have worked our buns off on these tracks. Not that it's all been just blood, sweat, and tears. I mean, it's been a lot of fun as well. In fact, a few funny memories come to mind now that I'm on this topic of recording, etc. I have a studio at home, and the day I was recording the lead vocal for Burning Blue, we were looking after a friend's dog, a German Shepherd, who began to howl for some reason when he heard me sing. How he was able to hear me sing to begin with, I'll never know. You see, the studio is relatively soundproof, and it's on a different floor. The dog was downstairs. Vibrations, maybe? However, somehow he heard me and gave the concert of his life to the rest of the family, who were attempting to have lunch downstairs. This was a Saturday. I couldn't hear the dog until I took a break and came downstairs. It all sounded insane. This dog was howling at the top of his lungs, and my youngest kid was crying because the howling scared him. And the whole situation just cracked me up. I mean, it was incredible. It was like from a movie. And so when I went back upstairs, whenever I would hit record and begin singing after that, I started laughing hysterically. The door was shut, and I couldn't hear the dog or my son Henry, but just the thought of it all was too much for me. I had to continue the next day. It was just an experience I'll never forget. And another thing that I'm sure I'll never forget is when we're shooting the video for Effigy. And that part where I put a tie and a hat on the guitar and I hang it. Well, we ran into a bit of a problem. In the first 10 or so takes, I used a tie that had a picture of the Beatles on it. Well, I mean, I did this because they're one of my favorite bands in the entire universe, if not the favorite. What I didn't realize was that it would come across on video as me hanging the Beatles, or in this particular case, as me hanging Paul McCartney, because his was the only face that was visible when the guitar was hanging from the tree, spinning around. Okay, so we're shooting this, and then somebody says, guys, we've got to start over. And I'm like, what? Because it had taken us about 2 hours at that point, and I really wanted to start shooting another scene. But anyway, so they continue. You need to get another tie, man. And I asked, why? Well, because you've just hung Sir Paul. What's the answer? Anyway, luckily I had a spare tie with me. It was great because I didn't have to drive back home to get a new tie. And we could just start over immediately. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoy the tracks. And thanks for taking the time to listen to this clip and our songs. We're very grateful for that. Cheers.